So this is gouache tutorial number 2. So I'm going to show you a different way to use these paints. It's going to look a little bit more like traditional acrylic paint, perhaps what you kind of think of when you think of paint. So for this one, we're going to take 2 colors and mix them, and then we're going to do the same exercise with trying to make a sphere look 3-dimensional. For this, you need the same exact materials. So you're going to need a 1/4 sheet of watercolor paper, a palette, 2 cups of clean water, and your brushes. You're going to choose 2 colors this time. So I think it makes sense to kind of do a darker color and a lighter color. I'd pick 2 that are going to mix well. So usually ones that are next to each other on the color wheel will work pretty well. So blue and green, yellow and green, red and purple, that kind of thing. So you're going to put those on your palette, whatever that may be. And spread them out a little bit so they don't mix up on the palette itself, at least not yet. And then you're also going to have a little bit of white available. So the white I put off to the side, because we're just going to use that when we need the highlight. So for working with the paint this way, you're going to use a lot less water. You basically just want to thin out the concentrated paint enough so that it's easy to paint with. So in this case, it really shouldn't look like a puddle at all. It should just be spreadable. So if you look at this on the palette, it looks a lot different than it did the first time. Like, you can't really see the plate underneath it. So we're going to start with the green. Same as we did last time, you'll want enough space down here that you can draw your circle leader. I'm going to add a little bit more water to that. And same as with the first tutorial, if you don't want to watch me paint in this whole rectangle, feel free to skip ahead to the next step. And when this dries, it'll be a little bit darker and you won't see the paper through it quite as much. Alright, so I'm going to clean my brush. And next I'm going to take a little bit of this green. And then mix up the yellow a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to the green. So we want a slightly lighter green. I'm going to put that right next to this one. So in this case, what we're really going after is having totally green, and then we're going to have a slightly yellowish green right next to it. And the last one, the last rectangle is going to be all yellow. I'm skipping a step here just so I can kind of show you what the 4 should look like. So we've got unmixed yellow, unmixed green, and then this one is going to be yellowish green, and this is going to be greenish yellow. So I'm going to take my palette And put a little of the yellow over here. And I'm just going to add a teeny bit of the green to it. Kind of see if that changes it the way I want it to. And I think I'll add a little bit more. Remember, this will be a lot thicker paint, so you're probably going to end up using more of it than you did before when we were using it like it was a watercolor, because you need more of the concentrated paint from the tube to create the opaque look. Alright, so that part's done. Next, you are going to do the circle. Again, if you want to trace out a circle, that's fine. Or if you just want to freehand it, you could do that. I'm going to add more paint to my palette. So this is the opposite of what we were doing before. So before we did the watercolor technique, we started with our lightest color and worked towards the darker color. This time you're going to paint in the darker color first, and then we're going to paint on top of that. And this is going to require letting it dry a little bit more in between layers. So again, it does take a little bit of patience, so having something else to do while you wait for your paint to dry is a good idea, instead of just sitting there watching paint dry. Alright, so that's my darkest color there for the base, for what's really the background. And let that dry a little bit. In the meantime, I can kind of mix up some of that yellowish green that I'll use. Try to be a little bit conservative with the amount of paint that you use, since this is kind of all we got. Mix those two up here. And add a little bit of water to thin it out. I'm going to paint on my next layer of a slightly lighter color. And chances are this won't show up quite as well on the document camera. You can also take a little bit of water on your brush and add that into the paint to help it blend a little bit with what's already on there. So the paint that you've already painted can be sort of reactivated with water. So let's say, you know, this edge you didn't quite think it was right. You can take just a brush with water on it and smooth that out a little bit if you want to. So that's kind of the good thing, but the bad thing is it's also really easy if you're adding another layer to sort of smudge the stuff underneath that you've already done. So I'm going to take a little bit more yellow and blend that in now while it's still a little wet. Like so. And this isn't really going to show up quite as well as it would if that layer were already dry, but I just want this to be a little bit lighter. And then what I'm going to do from here is let this dry, and then I will come back to it in the next video and kind of show you how to finish this up.